And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Looking at flying weather for Saturday morning, a lot of IFR out here over the Bering Sea, the Aleutians, right up into the Bering Strait, also along the Arctic coast. Otherwise, the interior, VFR, all the way down to Kodiak Island, Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound. Some IFR right up in toward Yakutat, and another batch here right off the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, big area of IFR now over the Gulf of Alaska, and mainly right along or just off the coastline, and marginal VFR over the inside water, especially to the north. Nothing but VFR over interior Alaska from Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, right on up to the North Slope, and IFR a little farther off the coast here, just barely on the west side of Nunivak Island there, but over the Pribilofs, and from Nikolsky westward. And for the morning hours Sunday, pretty good conditions right along the coast, mostly VFR, including Nunivak Island, eastern half of St. Lawrence Island, with the VFR all across the interior, right up to the Arctic coast now. Solid IFR for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Alaska Peninsula, not too bad. Kodiak Island there into the Barents IFR now, mostly along the east side of the island, across the Gulf of Alaska, right up to the southeast coast, with better conditions over the inside waters. And possible marginal VFR, low clouds, maybe some fog for Cook Inlet in the morning. And for the afternoon, that sort of persists there to some extent, with IFR over the Gulf of Alaska here, right up to the east side of Kodiak Island. Nothing but VFR over the interior. Looks like right through the weekend here. Good conditions, even a little farther off the coast here, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, all VFR. Disturbance bringing some IFR right along the central and western Arctic coast down into the portion of the Chukchi Sea. Then mostly IFR again for the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. Passes for tomorrow, Hanatufik-Kanatagan, good VFR right through the weekend. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR as well this weekend with rainy, open, windy VFR. Eastern Alaska Range, Isabel Mentasta, good VFR. Tanita VFR for Saturday, and Portage as well, but Chilkoot and White looks pretty marginal. And for the freezing levels here, about 10,000 feet over the southeast coast, and southern Alaska here, actually most of the interior there about 10,000 feet, a little lower along the Arctic coast, but not too much. 12,000 feet here out over the east central Bering Sea, and then back down to 8,000 feet over the southwest Bering. Icing with a weakening front here, a narrow band of possible isolated moderate icing from St. Lawrence Island right across St. Paul and St. George down into the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, nothing of any significance. Possible mixed icing here over the Copper River Basin and also out over the west central Aleutians, but icing free for the Panhandle. Looking at the jet stream, we've got northeast winds here at about 60 to 65 knots from the southwest coast into the Alaska Peninsula. South to north winds here kind of split as they approach the southern Panhandle, one branch taking off into Canada there at about 65 knots, the other one here wrapping back around this low farther to the south, so 60 knot easterlies over the Gulf of Alaska. Strongest wind associated with the low out here to the west, a band of 80 knot winds in advance of that. 9,000 feet, lighter winds at this elevation, 35 to 45 knots here in advance of that low over the southwest Bering Sea. Light eastern Bering over the interior under high pressure. North of that high though, west-southwest winds 25 to 30 knots, Arctic coast, western North Slope, and south to southeast winds 35 knots, turn east at 35 over the Gulf of Alaska, and then northeast over Kodiak Island. And maybe some 30 knot northeast winds there for the Barren Islands, just south of the Kenai Peninsula there in toward Kodiak. Otherwise light over the interior under high pressure, west-southwest 35 knots, clipping the western Arctic coast, and south to north winds here over the eastern Bering at 45 knots. Turbulence, light to isolated moderate turbulence for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, western Arctic coast down to about Cape Lisburne, Point Hope area, north of Kivalina though. Atka, maybe some moderate chop, and also for the far western Aleutians, pretty smooth everywhere else.